Mary lived a quiet life, she always had. Her days were spent in the comforting silence of the small-town library. She found solace among the towering shelves and the musty scent of old books. Each day, she dusted the countless stories, her fingers tracing the spines as if greeting old friends. Mary preferred the company of fictional characters. Their tales were predictable, their emotions contained within the pages. Real life with its messy complexities felt daunting. Mary's world was small, carefully curated. Her routines were her comfort. Every morning she walked the same path to the library, her footsteps echoing in the pre-dawn stillness. Every evening she returned to her cozy cottage, a haven filled with books and the warm glow of lamplight. Life was predictable, safe, and utterly predictable. It was a life she had carefully constructed, a shield against the uncertainties of the world. Yet, a flicker of something unnameable, a yearning for something more, sometimes stirred within her heart. John was a storm cloud in human form. He carried the weight of his past like a visible shroud. People whispered about his time in prison, their voices hushed, their eyes filled with judgment. He was an enigma, his rough exterior a barrier against a world that had already condemned him. John had learned to find solace in solitude. He had recently moved into the small cottage across from the library. Its paint was peeling and the porch creaked ominously. It was a fitting reflection of its occupant, weathered, scarred, and seemingly abandoned by hope. He spent his days working odd jobs, his strong hands calloused, his movements revealing a quiet strength. John yearned for a connection, for someone to see past the shadows that clung to him. But the world had already labeled him, and he had grown weary of trying to prove them wrong. He had resigned himself to a life lived in the margins, forever on the periphery of acceptance. The rain came suddenly, a torrent that seemed to mirror the turmoil brewing within Mary. She stood on the library steps, watching the downpour, her umbrella forgotten at her desk. Across the street, John emerged from his cottage, his face turned towards the sky, a hint of melancholy in his eyes. Their gazes met across the street, a fleeting connection in the midst of the storm. A clap of thunder startled Mary, and she took an involuntary step back. John saw her hesitation and with a barely perceptible nod crossed the street. He held out a large worn umbrella, shielding her from the rain. "Don't want you catching a cold," he mumbled, his voice gruff yet strangely comforting. Mary stared at him, speechless. It was the first time anyone had shown her such a simple kindness. "Thank you," she finally whispered, her cheeks flushed with unexpected warmth. John simply nodded, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. For a fleeting moment, the rain, the town, the weight of their pasts, all seemed to fade away. There was only the shared space beneath the umbrella, and the silent acknowledgement of a connection neither of them could explain. The encounter left Mary unsettled, the memory of John's unexpected kindness a persistent warmth in her thoughts. She found herself looking for him, her gaze drawn to his cottage across the street. She noticed the care he took in tending his small garden, the gentleness with which he spoke to the stray animals that wandered into his yard. These glimpses into his life chipped away at the image the town had painted of him. Her curiosity, once confined to the pages of her books, now extended to the man across the street. She began leaving a thermos of coffee on her porch each morning, knowing he would be passing by on his way to find work. It was a small gesture, but it felt momentous to Mary. It was her way of reaching out, of acknowledging the man beneath the rough exterior. John, used to being shunned, was initially wary of Mary's subtle overtures. He would find the coffee, still warm, a silent offering on her porch. He would watch her through his window, her movements in the library as familiar to him as his own reflection. He saw the kindness in her eyes, the way she treated everyone with respect, even those who whispered behind his back. John, starved for human connection, found himself drawn to her light like a moth to a flame. One blustery afternoon, a delivery truck arrived at the library, its cargo a mountain of new books. Mary, small-framed and accustomed to a world of paper and ink, struggled with the heavy boxes. John, observing from across the street, didn't hesitate. He crossed over, his stride purposeful, and wordlessly began unloading the truck. "You don't have to do that," Mary protested, her voice barely audible above the wind. John simply shook his head, his movements efficient and strong. He carried the boxes inside, stacking them neatly in the corner. His hands, roughened by years of hard labor, were surprisingly gentle with the books. "Thank you," Mary said again, her heart pounding in her chest. "It's just, everyone else." Her voice trailed off, unable to articulate the way the town seemed to avoid John, their fear palpable. John met her gaze, his eyes filled with an understanding that went beyond words. "Some stories are best left unread," he said quietly, his voice rough yet strangely soothing. As the weeks turned into months, a tentative friendship blossomed between Mary and John. They would find themselves talking on the library steps, their conversations a mix of comfortable silences and shared observations about the books they loved. Mary learned about John's passion for woodworking, his hands that could build walls also capable of carving intricate details into wood. John, in turn, discovered a kindred spirit in Mary. He found solace in her quiet company, her gentle nature a balm to his own troubled soul. He looked forward to their conversations, to the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her favorite authors, to the shy smiles she reserved just for him. He felt seen by her, truly seen, for perhaps the first time in his life. Their connection deepened, a fragile vine winding its way around their hearts. They began taking walks together, exploring the wooded trails that bordered their small town. They shared stories, their laughter echoing through the trees, their hands brushing tentatively, sending shivers down their spines. Love, unexpected and undeniable, began to bloom amidst the thorns of their pasts. The whisper started, venomous tendrils spreading through the town. People noticed Mary and John's growing closeness. Tongues wagged, judgments were passed. How could Mary, the sweet, innocent librarian, even think of associating with a man like John? Didn't she know about his past, about the darkness that clung to him like a shadow? Friends, concerned more about appearances than happiness, approached Mary, their faces etched with worry. "He's not one of us, dear," they'd say, their voices laced with a mixture of pity and disapproval. "You're too good for him, you deserve better." Their words, meant to be warnings, felt like poison, slowly seeping into Mary's heart. Doubt, like a persistent weed, began to take root in Mary's mind. Was she being foolish, reckless even, to allow herself to care for John? Could she truly look past his past, embrace the man he was now, despite the whispers that followed him like a curse? The weight of societal expectations, the fear of judgment, threatened to crush the fragile hope that had taken root in her heart. One evening, John arrived at Mary's cottage, his face etched with a pain she had never seen before. He had overheard the whispers, the cruel judgments about him and Mary. He knew the town would never accept him, and he couldn't bear the thought of bringing shame upon her. "I should go," he said, his voice rough with unshed tears. "I'll only bring you trouble." He turned to leave, his shoulders slumped with defeat. It was then that Mary made a decision. She stepped forward, her hand reaching out to touch his arm. "Don't," she whispered, her voice filled with a newfound strength. "I know about your past," she continued, her voice unwavering. "But I also know the man you are now. The kind, gentle soul that hides beneath the scars." Tears welled up in John's eyes, a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. "Mary, you don't know what you're saying," he choked out. "The town will never forgive me. They'll turn against you." Mary met his gaze, her own eyes shining with a love that refused to be extinguished. "Let them," she said fiercely. "Their judgment doesn't define us. I choose you, John. I choose love over fear, acceptance over prejudice. I choose us." As expected, the town reacted with predictable outrage. They gossiped, they pointed fingers, they ostracized Mary for her choice. Shopkeepers turned their backs when she entered their stores. Old friends crossed the street to avoid her. The once familiar streets now felt cold and unwelcoming. Mary felt the sting of their rejection, the pain of isolation. There were moments of doubt, fleeting whispers of fear that she had made a terrible mistake. But then, she would look at John, at the love and adoration in his eyes, and she would know she had made the right decision. John, heartbroken by the town's treatment of Mary, blamed himself for her suffering. He wanted to disappear, to spare her from the consequences of his past. But Mary wouldn't allow it. She stood by his side, her love an unyielding shield against the storm of their disapproval. Time, the great healer, slowly began to soften the town's hardened hearts. They witnessed the quiet devotion between Mary and John. They saw John's acts of kindness, the way he helped anyone in need, his past transgressions forgotten in the face of his present compassion. They saw the radiant smile on Mary's face, a happiness that had been absent before John entered her life. The whispers gradually subsided, replaced by grudging respect and eventually acceptance. They realized that love, in its purest form, had the power to redeem even the most troubled souls. Life wasn't perfect, of course. Scars, both emotional and physical, remained. But Mary and John had found solace in each other's arms. Their love, forged in the fires of adversity, had emerged stronger, more resilient. Years later, the library, once a symbol of Mary's solitary existence, became a testament to their love. John, with his skilled hands, built a beautiful addition, filled with sunlight and comfortable reading nooks. It became the town's gathering place, a testament to the transformative power of forgiveness and second chances. John, once ostracized and feared, was now a respected member of the community. He found peace in the embrace of Mary's love, his past transgressions forgiven, not just by the town but by himself. He had found redemption, not in seeking atonement, but in embracing the love that had been offered to him unconditionally. The story of Mary and John became a local legend, a reminder that love knows no boundaries, that everyone, even those who have stumbled, deserves a chance at happiness. It was a story about the courage to defy societal norms, to choose love in the face of adversity, and to find redemption in the most unexpected of places.